Artificial Frontier Podcast.
Welcome to another deep dive where we like to take a big stack of sources and try to pull out the most interesting stuff.
Exactly.
And today's topic is Mitochondrial Eve.
Ooh, very exciting.
Yeah, so we've got some videos from Everything Everywhere,
Yeah.
Wiki for All, Flame Tree Collective,
Yeah.
a bunch of other stuff.
Sounds like fun.
Yeah.
Where should we start?
Well, first of all, what is mitochondrial DNA? It sounds kind of complicated.
Yeah, it's really interesting, but not too complicated. So basically, besides the DNA that you get from both your parents, you also have a separate set of DNA in your mitochondria,
Okay.
which is like the powerhouse of the cell, right?
Right.
And this mitochondrial DNA, or mtDNA as we call it, is only passed down from mother to daughter.
Oh, wow.
So it's like this unbroken maternal line that you can trace back through the generations.
It's like a secret genetic message from all the women in your family.
Exactly. And, scientists can actually trace human migration patterns over like thousands of years by looking at the mutations in this mtDNA. So each mutation is like a tick of a clock. It's kind of like a molecular clock.
Okay.
And it tells us like when and where different populations split off.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So how does all of this relate to Mitochondrial Eve then?
Right. So Mitochondrial Eve, she's basically our most recent common female ancestor.
Okay.
So like the one woman that all living humans today can trace their ancestry back to on their mother's side.
Okay, so was she like the first woman on Earth or something?
No, not at all. She wasn't the only woman alive at the time, but it's just that her maternal line is the one that survived unbroken to today. And actually, Mitochondrial Eve can change over time,
Really?
As populations mix and move around, the person who holds that title can actually shift.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So where did scientists trace her journey? Where did it all begin?
Well, it seems like it all started in Africa.
Okay.
Probably the Kalahari Desert in southern Africa.
Oh.
And this out of Africa theory is backed up by the fact that African populations have the most diverse mtDNA.
Right.
So it suggests that our lineage spent the longest time evolving there.
Yeah, that makes sense. So they started in the Kalahari Desert and then moved out from there.
Exactly.
What were some of the key stops along that journey?
Well, one of the most important ways out of Africa was probably across the Red Sea.
Okay.
And there's this place called the Gates of Grief, which is this narrow strait that separates Eritrea and Yemen.
Wow.
Imagine crossing this treacherous passage to the Arabian Peninsula.
That's incredible.
It's amazing. And we actually have evidence from back then, 125,000 years ago. There's this fossilized coral reef in Eritrea, and it shows signs that our ancestors were scavenging for shellfish there.
Wow, so they were literally beachcombing.
Yeah, adapting to survive. Right?
It's crazy.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah. So from there, they continued to move eastward, right?
Yeah, into Asia and eventually all over the world.
So were there any big challenges or obstacles that they had to face along the way?
Oh, tons. Imagine something like the Toba supervolcanic eruption.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
Which happened 74,000 years ago.
Wow.
Basically, it created a volcanic winter that probably wiped out a ton of the population.
Yeah, that's scary. So did any groups manage to make it through that?
Yeah. Surprisingly, some did. For example, there's the Orang Asli people in Malaysia.
Why?
And they have these really unique genetic markers that suggest their ancestors survived that Toba eruption and continue to live in Southeast Asia.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, a real testament to their resilience.
Yeah. So despite all of our differences and how far apart we are spread out all over the world,
Right.
this mitochondrial DNA analysis shows that we're all actually connected.
Exactly. It really paints this picture of how interconnected we all are. Every single person on Earth, no matter where they're from or what they look like, can trace their ancestry back to this one woman, Mitochondrial Eve.
It's like we're all branches on the same giant family tree.
Exactly.
With roots going back to Africa.
And this connection isn't just some theoretical thing either. It has real-world implications. Imagine, a Greek man and a Native American living worlds apart, discovering through DNA testing that they share a common ancestor from thousands of years ago.
Really?
Yeah. It turns out their lineages converged somewhere in southern Siberia around 30,000 years ago. It's amazing.
That's incredible.
It's a powerful reminder that despite our differences, our stories are all intertwined.
Yeah, that's really cool. So is there a male equivalent to Mitochondrial Eve?
You're right.
Like a mitochondrial atom or something?
Yeah, it's called Y chromosomal atom.
Okay.
And he's like the most recent common male ancestor. And we can trace him through the Y chromosome, which is passed from father to son.
So did they live at the same time then?
No. Actually, Y chromosomal atom probably lived around 60,000 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Quite a bit later than mitochondrial Eve. Remember that molecular clock?
Oh, right.
So yeah, separate timelines.
Okay, so they didn't know each other or anything.
No prehistoric love story there.
Okay. That's kind of what I was thinking.
But both are super important for understanding our shared heritage.
Yeah.
It's amazing how much we can learn from these tiny bits of DNA.
It really is.
So much more to uncover.
I can't wait to dive deeper.
Me too. It really makes you think, like, who will be the future Y chromosomal atom?
Yeah, like could be someone we know,
It's possible.
like a celebrity or someone famous historically, whose genes have just spread so far.
Right.
Yeah.
A lot of people think it could be Genghis Khan
Really?
because he had so many descendants.
Wow. That's crazy.
It just shows you how these historical events and figures, can really shape our genetic makeup.
So these markers aren't set in stone then?
No, they can change
Oh, wow.
as people move around and populations mix.
So it's kind of always evolving.
Exactly. But it's also important to remember that mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosomal atom only give us a limited view.
Okay.
It's just one piece of the puzzle.
Yeah.
They don't tell the whole story of human evolution.
Okay. So just focusing on them would be like looking at a single tree and thinking you understand the whole forest.
Exactly. To really understand human evolution, we need to look at all the branches, all the roots, the whole ecosystem,
Right. That makes sense. So how do we account for all the different ways people look then if we all came from, a pretty recent common ancestor?
Right. Well, we talked about natural selection and adaptation, but there's also something called genetic drift.
Okay.
Imagine like a small group of people migrating to a new island.
So,
They only carry a small sample of genes from their original population.
right.
And over time, as they reproduce and their population grows, certain traits, just by chance, become more or less common.
Oh, so it's not necessarily because those traits were better or anything.
No, it's just random chance,
Yeah.
like a genetic lottery.
Wow.
And over long periods, this random fluctuation in gene frequencies can lead to some pretty big differences in appearance.
So between different populations, even if they came from the same ancestor.
Exactly.
Wow. That's crazy. So it's a mix of natural selection, adaptation, and then this genetic drift that's made us look so different.
Right.
Okay. But this journey through our genetic past, I mean, it's not just about where we came from, right?
No, it's not.
It also tells us about our health, the diseases, today.
Exactly.
Like how?
For example, certain mtDNA mutations can actually increase your risk of getting certain diseases,
Really?
like Alzheimer's or Parkinson's.
Wow.
And by studying these patterns, researchers can learn more about what causes these diseases.
So like every piece of this puzzle tells us a little more about who we are.
Yes, and about how our bodies work.
So we could actually use this knowledge to treat diseases better.
Exactly. Imagine a future where your doctor could look at your mtDNA and prescribe medications that are specifically tailored to your genetic makeup.
Wow. That would be incredible.
Personalized medicine.
Yeah. No wonder so many people are interested in ancestry testing and stuff these days.
Absolutely. It gives people the sense of belonging,
Right.
understanding where they fit in the big picture.
And learning more about their genes.
Exactly. Speaking of which, remember how we talked about mtDNA and aging?
Oh, yeah. You mentioned something about that.
Right. So mtDNA is actually quite vulnerable to damage from free radicals.
Okay.
These are basically unstable molecules that can harm our cells.
Oh, I've heard of those.
And as we age, this damage builds up and contributes to, aging and age-related diseases.
So it's like our mitochondria have a built-in timer.
That's a good way to put it. And scientists are trying to find ways to protect our mitochondria from this damage.
So by studying mtDNA, we could potentially slow down the aging process.
It's a possibility, and it just highlights how much potential there is in this research. I mean, we're really only scratching the surface of what we can learn.
Yeah. It's amazing to think that the secrets to a longer, healthier life could be hidden in the DNA of our ancient ancestors
I know, right?
who are just beachcombing for survival
Exactly. It shows you that the past, present, and future are all connected.
by this thread of genetic information.
Yes.
That's amazing. And it connects all of us, no matter our differences.
Right. We all share this common origin story. this shared heritage that makes us human.
But we've only just begun to explore this field, haven't we?
We've only just scratched the surface.
Wow. I'm excited to dive even deeper.
Me too. There's so much more to learn.
You know, it's incredible to think how these little pieces of genetic code can change our understanding of history.
Yeah, like the study of ancient DNA is totally changing the way we think about how humans migrated.
Right.
It's not just about archaeology and linguistics anymore.
Right.
mtDNA is giving us a whole new level of understanding.
So it's like adding another dimension to the map of human history.
Exactly.
We can actually see the paths our ancestors took.
Yeah. And the challenges they faced, and even find connections between populations that seem totally unrelated.
Like, how about the peopling of the Americas?
Oh, that's a great example.
It's like, for the longest time, everyone thought humans first got to North America by crossing the Bering Land Bridge.
Right around 13,000 years ago.
Yeah.
But now mtDNA is suggesting that maybe there were some even earlier migrations,
Oh, wow.
possibly along the Pacific coast.
So the story's more complicated than we thought.
Much more.
That's so cool. It's like a detective novel with every new clue changing what we thought we knew.
Exactly. And mtDNA is like this amazing tool that helps us put together the pieces of the puzzle.
It's not about replacing other types of evidence.
Right. It's about weaving it all together to get a fuller picture.
Yeah. Okay. So speaking of puzzles, what about Neanderthal DNA?
Oh, right.
I remember reading that modern humans have some Neanderthal DNA.
Yeah,
Does that have anything to do with mtDNA?
that's a great question. So mtDNA traces the maternal line, right? But the Neanderthal DNA shows us that Homo sapiens and Neanderthals actually interbred.
Wow.
And it wasn't just a one-time thing either. It left a permanent mark on our genes.
So it's not just about ancient migrations then.
Right.
It's also about ancient interactions and relationships.
Exactly. It challenges that old idea that human evolution was this straight line.
Right.
It was actually this complex web of interactions and adaptations and interbreeding.
That's incredible. And the technology keeps getting better and better.
Right.
We're able to analyze DNA from older and older fossils.
It's like opening a window into even deeper parts of our past.
It really is. But with all these advancements, we have to be careful about the ethical implications.
Oh, absolutely. As we dig deeper into our genetic history, we need to be mindful of things like respecting the remains of our ancestors,
Right.
working with indigenous communities, and protecting genetic privacy.
Those are all really important points.
We need to make sure this research is done responsibly and the knowledge is used ethically.
It's a good reminder that science isn't just about finding facts.
Right.
It's also about navigating these really complex questions.
And making sure the knowledge is used for good.
And that responsibility isn't just on the scientists.
It's on all of us. We need to talk about these issues. Like, we advocate for policies that protect privacy and make sure this knowledge benefits everyone.
Like a team effort.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's why we love doing this deep dive.
Yeah.
We want to make this information accessible and interesting so that everyone can explore their own ancestry, ask questions, and be part of the conversation.
Because ultimately, this is the story of all of us.
Exactly. And as we wrap up, we encourage you to keep exploring.
Yeah. Discover the stories of your own ancestors. Embrace the amazing diversity of humanity and never stop learning.
Remember, despite all our differences, we all come from the same place.
A woman who lived hundreds of thousands of years ago in Africa.
Her story is our story.
Artificial Frontier Podcast.